Hey everyone, so my name is Leon, and today I kind of want to do a Dreamcasting all winner Big Brother season. So, hints on the word Dreamcasting, meaning this will be a season that will most likely would never happen because a lot of the people that are casting bill will most likely won't be able to play again or won't play again. And even though it's a Dreamcast build, I decided to make it a bit realistic in a way where the players on this cast make sense together. I decided to cast players that had some familiarity with each other. Um, it was a lot harder to get the female winners. The male winners, it was a lot harder to choose from. But with that being said, let's just jump right into the video and I'll give you my picks of an all winner cast. Another thing I decided to do, I decided to keep it at the 16 person cast. So I decided to not limit it to like 14 or 13 or 12. I decided to keep it at 16, which is why it was kind of hard to come up with a list of equal amounts of men and women. But we'll see how it goes. You'll see how my list looks. With that being said, let's just get right into it. So the first person I decided to cast was Lisa Donahue from Big Brother 3. I decided to cast her. Like I said, Dreamcast situation. I think of all the players listed here, she actually does have a chance to play again. More than I would say half of this cast. She's somebody who's very likable, very good on the social side of things. Can have a potential to be a trope that can win challenges. Is decent enough athletically and has some strategies. Not the completely naive in the strategy part. Can come up with some plays. You know what I mean? Because that's how she was able to win her season. She knew that sitting next to Danielle at the end, she would win due to a bit of jury. Anyway, moving on. June for Big Brother 4 is another person I decided to cast on here. Like I said, Dreamcasting scenario. She lives in a different country now, supposedly. Somebody is a pretty decent social player despite of her snarky personality. Somebody who is naturally likable by most of the cast. Not all the cast members, but most of the cast will probably like her enough to keep her around, or would see that she's not a likable character and might keep her around so they can win against her. I think she's underrated in the strategical sense. Um, from a physical competition sense, I don't know if she can win any competitions if at all. But anyways, she'll be a good casted choice here. Moving on, Maggie from Big Brother 6. Somebody who I needed on this cast because there was not a lot of options. Maggie is somebody who can. I don't know if she'll do well this season, but somebody who is good, decent enough socially on certain cast situations. Somebody who can win some physical challenges and has a decent enough of strategy mindset. So I put on here Mike Boogie from Big Brother 7, obvious choice, and obvious in terms of somebody who's a good character, somebody who has a decent ability to be a true threat. Unfortunately, what happened to him and Dr. Will happened, so I won't be putting Dr. Will's cast. Basically, I decided to choose between him, Mike Boogie, or Dr. Will. I decided to go Mike Boogie. It might be blasphemous. Dr. Wills is one of the better winners, best winners of all time, but I think Mike Boogie on a return, even though he played 3 times now, would be a more interesting character and more polarizing, someone who has connections to some of the other winners on this cast, so I decided to put him on here. Moving on, Dan from Big Brother 10, obvious choice. I know he's doing a lot of stuff on Twitch, but obvious a decent triple, not decent. What I'm saying, he's one of my favorite winners of all time. I think the best Big Brother player of all time. Someone who's good at all 3 aspects of his game. Maybe too big of a threat to win again, but we'll see. I think he can at least give himself the jury, despite being a big threat. So I put him on here. Join for Big Brother 11, somebody who's pretty good socially, doesn't bring much else to the game, but was needed on this cast, and she's different enough as a character that she would stand out. She wouldn't be a complete dud. Somebody who's different from a lot of the players in this cast, and somebody who will probably rely, you know, on a social game more than her strategic or physical ability. So somebody I decided to put on here. Hayden for Big Brother 12, one of the figureheads of the brigade. I'm not even saying it right. Someone who's good physically, Socially, could be pretty solid. Strategically, he's above average. Had to put him on here. It was between him or Drew, but I decided to go with him. Him and Hayden. Due to what I see from Survivor, I decided Hayden is a more likely person to be casted on another season than Drew. Anyways, moving on. Rachel Riley, somebody who was a lock for me. Somebody just like Jordan's a different enough character. Obviously wants to play again. Somebody who's a whether you like it or not, is a triple threat in terms of not complete triple threat like Dan Giesling, but somebody who's decent enough socially, has good enough connections with some of the castmates that they won't get rid of her first. Somebody who's pretty good physically, someone who's pretty much over, I wouldn't say overrated, underrated strategical aspect. So I put on here Ian from Big Brother 14. It was between him or Steve, but I decided to put him on here because of his connection with Dan and Mike Boogie. I decided, and his connection to another player on his cast that we'll be talking about later. I decided to put him on here just to make sure the dynamics are interesting. He's not gonna play again probably. Somebody who's an underrated triple threat, very underrated physically, good social, well, decent socially, and strategically is his strong suit. Knew when to make the right moves, knew how to attach himself to the right players to get to the end game of his season and to eventually win. So had to put him on here. Derrick, Big Brother 16, no questions asked, had to be on this cast. Somebody who's a triple threat, someone just like Dan can win the season. Any season, almost every season. I would say 90% of the seasons he's on, he can win it. I just think he's a too big of a threat to probably win the season unless he aligns himself with a lot of the other bigger threats. And I don't think he'll play the same as Big Brother 16, but I think he'll be good enough strategically to change his game around to get himself at least to jury. So I gotta put Derek on here. Nicole Franzo, as I mentioned, the connection with Ian, Nicole Franzo on here. I decided to put on here one because she's needed. Two, didn't really have much options to put on it, and it's unlikely that she'll play again, but she has enough connections to a lot of the cast. Definitely a lot of the castmates that I mentioned before, and some of the castmates that I will mention in the near future. Nicole Franzo, underrated triple threat, can win some physical comps, decent socially, maybe not anymore. Depends on the cast with her. Strategically, pretty solid. Knew in Big Brother 18 that she had to get rid of Michelle because Michelle would be probably the only person to target her, even though Michelle is someone who's not going to win the season. But Michelle would be probably the only person to go after her. Big Brother 16 also played a solid game despite getting taken out on jury. And Big Brother 23, not 23, 22, she actually is played pretty well. She made the final three, so I gotta give her a spot here. Next person, Josh Martinez. He was also a lot for me. Yes, he never. I'm gonna speak on his challenge game a little bit. Yeah, he never won the season of the challenge, but I've seen a bunch of the challenges that he's on. His strategic game, I would say, this is kind of blasphemous, but it's kind of gotten better from what I've seen in the challenge from versus first time Big Brother, where even though he won the season, he was kind of a mess a little bit strategically, but he has some decent strategical aspects of his game. Socially, he's probably the worst socially in his cast, but I think if he can lower his threat level to where people perceive him as a goat, like somebody could take to the end and win, and maybe this time they'll beat him, but I think he can get to the end or close to the end game. Physically can win some challenges, but let's move on. Casey, I guess she was a lock, but she's also another person that's pretty different characterized from the rest of the cast. Somebody who's a triple threat, so well, two. She's good at two to three things. Strategically, she's okay. Physically and from a physical aspect and from a social aspect, she's pretty good. Self-explanatory. Also is on the challenge with Josh. I had to put on here. Moving on, Cody from Big Brother 22. Put him on here because his connection to Derrick, and I think he's actually one of the best players of all time to me. He didn't know the game. He got to Final Two Big Brother 16. Pretty good triple threat. Had to put him on here. Last person, well, the last two people I put on here. The last guy I put on here is Xavier for Big Brother 23. This might be blasphemous, but I decided to choose between him and Evil Dick, and I almost put Evil Dick on here, but then I remembered a lot of the Big Brother winners and Evil Dick have issues with each other, so kind of like with the real Mike Burger situation, I'm not saying Evil Dick would, harm any of these players, but I feel like I don't think it'll look right if you put Evil Dick on the cast with Nicole or Evil Dick with a cast on Derrick. So I decided to just keep Evil Dick off for now. I would love to have Evil Dick return, just for the entertainment standpoint. He's a pretty entertainment winner, but I couldn't have him on him because of the way how he is to certain winners. I decided to put Xavier on here instead. I want to see Xavier play again. He's one of my favorite winners. He's not the best winner of all time, but he's one of my favorites to watch. Seeing his maneuvering on that season, the Big Brother 23, was really fun to watch. And he's a decent character. He's not the most entertainment, but he's not boring either. And he's a triple threat, somebody who's decent strategically, very good physically when he wants to be, and socially, he's one of the better social players of this game. So I had to put it on here. Last lady I put it on here is Morgan from Big Brother OTT. There wasn't a lot of female winners to choose from. It was either her or have one of the celebrity Big Brother winners like a Tamar or Marissa. So I had to go with Morgan. Has the potential to be triple threat, and somebody who also went on the challenge. Somebody who probably has learned some things from going to challenge with the type of political game that you have on there. Somebody who I think will do well in the return, or at least either do well, be something that's different from everything else that every other character that I've seen. But yeah, that's it for the casting for the My Dream casting and All Winners Season Big Brother. I decided to choose those 16 players. So once again, let's just go through it real quick. Lisa from Big Brother 3, June from Big Brother 4, Maggie from Big Brother 6, Mike Boogie from Big Brother 7, Dan from Big Brother 10, Jordan from Big Brother 11, Hayden from Big Brother 12, Rachel Riley from Big Brother 13, Ian Terry from Big Brother 14, Derrick from Big Brother 16, Nicole from Big Brother 18, Josh from Big Brother 19, Casey from Big Brother 20, Cody, California from Big Brother 22, Xavier from Big Brother 23, and Morgan from Big Brother OTT. So that was my 16 player all winner cast. So let me know your comments. You probably don't like my list, but it is what it is. Thank you guys for watching this video, and adios.